Welcome to my colored pencil review, and the reason for this review is because I bought these Goldfabers from Faber-Castell a while back. They're fairly new, and I was just very curious how they would stack up against other pencils. So I bought a few pencils. I had some pencils already. Some people let me use their pencils, so I got a whole range of pencils here. All kinds of pencils which I just tested and to see how well they're all doing, and I've got pretty much about the same color, all a light green and a dark green, and according to the description most of the colors should match, but once I started using them most of them just don't match. So what I'll do, I'll just show you some swatches I made with these pencils, just tell you how they reacted to them, and with each thing I did I just rated them in stars, and then at the end we'll just look at the price and see how they perform price wise too, and just what my conclusion would be and my recommendation to buy a pencil for certain kinds of works or any kinds of works. So let's just get into that. I'll just put the pencils aside for now, they'll stay there. And the first thing I did was I started with some watercolor paper, some not really rough watercolor paper, but it has some texture to it, and just basically started making swatches, just one color, both colors, and then blend the colors just to see how they would perform. And then I put the name here, and the first pencils I try are these pencils. They're called DecoTime Premium Quality DaVinci pencils, and these are just more amateur hobby pencil, and I tried them on watercolor paper and they did okay. They're quite soft, they have a good coverage, just an average blend on this kind of paper. They just didn't blend great, but okay. And there's another paper you can see here, another DaVinci paper I bought, but I haven't even continued with those because those had some flaws in them. The DecoTime DaVincis were definitely a lot better than these very cheap ones. And the next one I tested are the Koh-I-Noors. Those are these, and the Koh-I-Noors are a bit harder to use, so they're not as soft as the other ones, but they put down lots of pigment, as you can see here. Bold, strong pigments, and quite easy to use. They have a good blend, definitely a good blend. Then I had the Bruynzeel Design pencils. These are Bruynzeel Design. These are created by Bruynzeel for architects and designers, and these are quite hard pencils. Now the advantage of hard pencils is you get great details, but they're on this rougher paper, they're a bit slippery, like they slip. Yeah, you have to put down some pressure to get nice color, and you get a decent coverage. So you're a bit harder to use, but decent coverage, and they're a harder pencil for sure. And the next one I of course were the Goldfabers. They are medium soft. They're here. They have a good coverage. They have a pretty good blend on this kind of paper. A decent blend, I would say. Decent blend. Prismacolors. Where are the Prismacolors? Those are these two. The Prismacolors, those are soft, really soft pencils. And because of that, they have a good coverage, that's for sure, a good blend, but they build up pigment way too fast. And even if you use very little pressure, they still put down a lot of pigment. And the next one were the Polychromos, Faber-Castell Polychromos. Those are famous pencils used by many artists. And these are, I'd say, medium soft, great coverage, and they have a decent blend, a good blend. Yeah, not an exceptionally blend, but a good, yeah, pretty much a good blend. So I expected, to be honest, slightly more from them. After hearing all the stories, they're good, but not as great as I would think they would be. Then you have the Irojiten from Tombow in Japan. These are hard pencils, pretty hard pencils, good coverage, decent blend, and not as vibrant as all the others. As you can see, these are don't put down as much pigment as all the others. They're definitely a step behind in that. And depending on what kind of work, if this set is, I think, created for nature work, and then yeah, these colors would work very well, but not bold, strong colors. And then the next down here are the Pablos, the Caran D'ache Caran D'ache Pablos, great coverage, great blend, and these from all the pencils probably were the easiest to use. great layering, good blending, easy to use. And then I have the Derwent Coloursoft down at the bottom. Soft, very soft, decent coverage, good blend, very good blend, but that's a bit of work, hard to achieve. So you have to be careful to build up your layers slowly. And then the last brand I use, it's not even a brand, just some art, they call them artist quality pencils, really cheap ones, and surprisingly they did okay. I didn't rate them, didn't do them in the rating like this one, but they did okay. So on the watercolor paper, the Pablos would definitely be the best, and then I would pick Polychromos. Prismacolors did well, so did the Koh-I-Noors. They did well on this paper. Let's see, that is the watercolor paper. Then the next thing I did, again, I used the same watercolor paper, but I swapped it around the other side, which is smooth, and the smoother side I used for a blender pencil and white spirit. And I know a lot of people like to use the watercolor paper, the smooth side, or get really smooth watercolor paper. And as you can see from the ratings, probably this is close. Once you start using a blender pencil, they do very well. And even with the eraser, I erased a bit from them. They did pretty well with the eraser too. And the exceptional ones on that with the blender pencil were the Derwents and the Pablos. They just did extremely well. Great blends, nice blends, very good. So they got the highest star rating. And the rest, as you can see, all did well. As soon as you start, if you put down enough pigment and start using a blender pencil, you just get great results with any pencil really. And then except for the Pablo and the Derwent, they just did a bit better than the rest. And as you can see, the Prismacolor again, this was harder to control because it puts down so much pigment. It's a bit harder to control. You still get a decent blend, but not as nice as here with the Koh-I-Noor, where you get really from dark going to light, and here too, these have that, and this is just missing there. And if you use the white spirit, then there's quite a difference between all the pencils. The Derwents here on Get 1 Star, they did just terrible with the white spirit. Turpentine I used. One big mess. They put down so much pigment that it just all blends into one. Pablos did very well. The Tombow Irojiten don't react too well. Polychromos okay. The Prismacolors okay, but they have a bit the same issue as the Derwents, but not as badly. Goldfabers didn't react too well. The Bruynzeels didn't react too well either. Koh-I-Noors great, and the DecoTime, the hobby amateur pencils, it's surprisingly well with that. And here too, this pencil does surprisingly well with all the techniques so far. Koh-I-Noor just did exceptionally well with great blend, reacts well on it, and it's very easy to control. The next paper I used is mixed media paper, one of my favorite papers to use because you can mix all kinds of media with it. Yeah, a bit of a different story with all the pencils. This is a bit smoother than the watercolor paper, and some pencils react very well to that. Surprisingly, the Koh-I-Noor reacts very well to it. Easy to put down, easy to use. The Bruynzeel reacts very well. It's very easy to use. Great blends, great coverage with this one. Goldfaber didn't do too well. Prismacolor does okay, so does the Polychromos. Does okay, but compared to the Koh-I-Noor and the Bruynzeel, not even close. And the same for the Pablo. It does okay. The other paper did very well, and the Derwent did some things very well, but these are just okay. The Koh-I-Noor and the Bruynzeel do exceptionally well on this paper, just putting them down regularly. And if you would use a blender pencil again, then there wouldn't be much difference between all of the pencils. They would all blend, although these would get great blends. These get great blends and the rest okay. Even the 1 star still gets an okay. Then I used the Colorless blender marker, one of these. And it is for alcohol markers, but works great on colored pencils. So one tip, if you have a colorless blender marker or get your hands on one, you don't need the expensive Copic ones. The cheaper ones will do well too, and they blend great for certain pens. Most pencils do well with them. You get great blends, very easy to use, easier to use than a blender pencil. DecoTime did good. The Koh-I-Noor did exceptionally well. The Bruynzeel not. It doesn't react well. Same as with the white spirit to fluids. It just doesn't react well. The Goldfaber again also not good. The Prismacolor okay, the Polychromos okay, the Irojiten surprisingly reacted well to the Colorless blender marker. Pablo did extremely well, and the Derwent did okay. So these two, the Koh-I-Noor, and again this Koh-I-Noor does very well, and the rest does okay except for the Goldfabers and the Bruynzeel. Not so well with that kind of technique. And then I used this very smooth watercolor paper on this one, and tried all of them, blended all of them with a blender pencil. And on this side I just used baby oil. Faber-Castell recommends to do that with the Goldfabers, but not my kind of thing really. It's okay, but not something I would use. I prefer blender pencil or some white spirit. That works way better. Although it was fun to do, but not to be repeated. And as you can see, I didn't rate these on this paper because basically they all performed the same. They all did well, from the cheap pencil to the most expensive pencil. They all just performed very well on this kind of paper. Smooth watercolor paper, no difference. They did great. And the next paper is Bristol paper. Now that's a bit of difference. This is very smooth paper. The Koh-I-Noor and the DecoTime just do not react too well to that kind of paper. The Bruynzeel, on the other hand, does extremely well, and I think that is because Bruynzeel also designed it to be used with this kind of paper for architects and designers. It does very well. Goldfaber not too well. The Prismacolor very well on this paper, and the Polychromos not too well on this paper. Irojiten not, and again the Pablo great on this paper, and the Derwent did actually okay on this paper. And the last paper I did is this one, watercolor paper, but better graded watercolor. This you would use for professional works. This and there again, as you can see, I did all of them and just didn't rate them because on expensive paper they all do very well. And even the cheap, this is the cheapest pencil, the no brand pencil, as you can see, that's great. And if you use a blender pencil on this too, great results. And I know Derwent is promoted to the Coloursoft to do extremely well on this kind of paper, but it didn't do better than any of the others. So again, this I didn't rate the paper, didn't rate the pencils because they just did all do well. So with all these papers I used all these various things. I just did the ratings, the tests, and then of course came to some conclusions, some end marks, and rating on the papers. And what I will do is I'll rate them and then I'll give the price with that too. Yeah, that's the best idea, to just rate them, tell them how much, which papers which pencils did well, and then I'll do the pricing too and arrange them a bit differently with the pricing. So I'll arrange them now according to the rating, which were best and which got the less good ratings. Okay, the ratings. The Artist pencil quality I didn't rate, but it's in the lower, it did okay. And in my ratings, the Faber-Castell just got 7 points, and they just they didn't do as well as I expected them to do. So honestly, because these DecoTimes, which are much cheaper, these hobby quality, they just have 8 points, so they're about the same. So these are the okay pencils. Okay pencils, depending on what kind of work you do. And then the Irojiten got 8 points as well. They just didn't perform as well. They're hard to use and they're very hard to on the tip, so they don't put down as much pigment. That's for the don't react well to every kind of paper. Then the Derwent gets 10 points, so these get 7, 8 points. These are okay pencils. The Derwent is decent, I would say a decent pencil. I expected way more of them, but they just don't perform well on certain papers. They do great on expensive papers, but so do any of these. Even the cheap ones do great on expensive papers, so you wouldn't need a Derwent for that. Then you have the Bruynzeel Designs. They will get 14 points. They did pretty okay on most papers, not on some they failed, but most papers they do very well, and they'll just if you use detailed work, they just great. And then we have the Faber-Castells. They got 14 points too, so definitely above. These are okay, this is decent, these are definitely good. The Faber-Castell goes there, and the Prismacolors too. They, on certain papers, they just perform very well, and others not so good, but they're an okay pencil. 14 these got. And then surprisingly the Koh-I-Noors, and they surprised me really. These are great all-round pencils, and they just perform on every kind of paper pretty well, and I was surprised about them. I didn't expect them to do so well. And then you have the Pablos, they got 19, so these got 15, these got 19 points, because they just do on any paper, did well, and a bit above the Koh-I-Noors. And why did I give them a higher rating than the Koh-I-Noors? That's because of the light fastness, and let's look at that too. The Pablos and the Polychromos, the Faber-Castell Polychromos and the Pablo, the Caran D'ache Pablos, extremely light fast. They have great ratings on that, and your artworks, they stay well for a long time. That would count too for the Bruynzeels, by the way. They'll go in this range. These are the best. Bruynzeels, extremely light fast, and probably because they were designed again for architects and designers, that is probably why they are extremely light fast. So these are extremely light fast. And then you have a range of, let me see, the Koh-I-Noors are good light fast. The Prismacolors are good light fast too. And those would be the good light fast, and the Bruynzeel, no, not the Bruynzeel, the Goldfabers from Faber-Castell. These are supposed to be light fast, but don't get a rating. So I know these people have tested these pencils, the Prismacolor and the Koh-I-Noors were tested, and they did well. These do extremely well, these did well, and according to Faber-Castell, these do well, but I haven't tested them, and they don't think they've been around long enough to have the ratings tested by people. But I'm testing them right now, so I might get back on that, but that will take a while. Then the Colorsofts, the Derwents are known to be not too light fast, so they didn't get any points for that. And these pencils, the Irojiten, are known not to be light fast. They fade pretty quick, just the same as the Derwents fade pretty quick. And these cheaper pencils, I have no clue, nobody tested that, and I might test that one day, but I'm expecting those to fade pretty well. Pretty well, yeah. No, pretty well, pretty quick, huh? To fade pretty quick. So let me see, my recommendations. Let's go with, if you do coloring, and I did coloring too. I can show you. I did. So here's a little example of coloring I did with all of the pencils. Just did the same, faded them a little bit, and then blended them. And to be honest, if you are just coloring, adult coloring, kids coloring, but mainly adult coloring, of course, use coloring books, then basically any of the pencils do well. And I know the Derwents are very popular on coloring, but to be honest, the cheap pencil, this artist, not the artist grade, but the grade 2, the cheap DecoTime pencil, honestly, did just as well as the way more expensive Derwents. So if you are coloring, I would say just go for a local hobbyist amateur brand and just test them out, and probably you'll be very happy with them. And if I put this DecoTime with them, they came in a box like this. There's 4 sets of them, each of 18 colors, a whole color range, surprisingly color range, and these are a box like this. I'll get into the price later. It's cost hardly anything. Great presentation, nice pencils. If you only do coloring, I would get something like this. In Europe you can get this in the Action, and I would just buy 4 sets, even 4 cents, then you get a great color range. So for coloring you don't need an expensive pencil. If you don't care about light fastness and use expensive paper, then again it wouldn't matter which pencil you pick, they all perform well. Now the thing is, of course, if you're an artist, then you want your work not to fade, and then of course you get only this range of pencils. These for sure do well. So coloring, I will just pick regularly a local brand, a good local artist hobby brand, great for coloring. If you're an architect or designer, I would pick the Bruynzeels for sure, no doubt about it. Or if you need detailed work, then this, and you're an artist and you want pencils that do great details and can be combined with other pencils, these do extremely well. Great light, extremely well light fastness, and they keep their tip while they do great detailed work. So I would pick them. If you do comics, to be honest, and use a lot of smooth paper for your comics and you want colored papers, I would pick the Prismacolors. The Prismacolor Premiers, great for that kind of work. For other kind of work, I don't think I would prefer them. But if I would still be doing a lot of comics, I would definitely pick this color pencil because they put down their pigment really fast. Great bold, strong colors, nice blends. So and then I would pick them. Or you could also use these for that kind of work. They would be great too. But I think for a comic, I would prefer this because of the strong, bold colors. And if I would do architectural work and houses, and I draw a lot of houses, I definitely would prefer these colors as well. Great colors and great details. If I would do only work that is exposed and also do expositions and exposed to a lot of light, then I would pick either the Pablo or the Faber-Castell. Those are extremely light fast. My personal preference would be the Caran D'ache Pablos because they performed on any paper, any technique, and did extremely well with all of them. And the Polychromos just didn't do well with every paper and every technique. They do great on expensive paper, but on smoother paper they just didn't perform as well. My overall recommendation would be definitely, and to my surprise, the Koh-I-Noor Hardtmuth Polycolors. Those are from all the pencils that are here, and also price-wise, and I'll get to that at the end. And performance-wise, definitely the best pencils. If these, you may want to test them. They say they have good light fastness ratings, and people tested them to be good. Some say they're not as good as the Pablos and the Polychromos, and others say they're just as good. I would test them. I would definitely take these. I would recommend all round work, whatever you do, whatever paper you use, whatever technique you use. These Koh-I-Noors do well with everything, to my surprise. I would definitely recommend them. And if light fastness, extreme light fastness isn't an issue, then these would do. They're okay in light fastness, but not as extreme as the other two. The disappointing ones were, I expected more of the Tombows, to be honest. They're hard and pale colors, but for certain works that would pretty much work very well. But they have a pretty bad light fastness rating, so you couldn't expose your drawing. They would fade in the end. And the most disappointing, I think, still were the Derwents. I expected a lot more of the Coloursoft, but they just don't perform well on every paper. They perform great on expensive paper, but all of them performed great on that kind of paper. And seeing the price, which we'll go into now, I would just definitely not even consider buying those. Compared to the others, they don't stack up as well. Price range. Now, of course, these artist quality, no brand name, and the Deco ones, those are the least expensive. The DecoTime, these artist qualities go for $4.99 for 36. And the DecoTimes, they come in 4 sets like I've shown, and each set is $1.99, so €2 for 18 great pencils, surprisingly good. So if you would buy 54 of them, then there would be €6, basically €6. And then compared to these Derwents, which actually don't perform much better than them, and that is the disappointing thing. These Derwents, if you buy 48 of those, are €70, 10 times as much. They don't perform 10 times better, not even double, not twice as good as these cheap ones. So those are in range. These are the really cheap ones. Then we get to the mid-range. The mid-range are the Derwent. The Bruynzeel Design. These you can buy 48 for €32. That is not too bad. The Goldfabers are 48 for €38. But then again, I don't think I would recommend buying them. Seeing the price, seeing how they perform, I would pick the Bruynzeels or the Koh-I-Noors. The Koh-I-Noors are slightly more expensive 46 euros, so these are 38 euros, these are 46 euros, but they definitely perform for that price, and just even disregarding the price, they perform great. So Goldfabers I wouldn't recommend, and I would either buy the Bruynzeels for that price or the Polycolors by Koh-I-Noors, definitely. Now the Tombow Irojiten, in the Netherlands, these were 30 pencils for 60 euros, very expensive. I wouldn't buy them for that price, but on Amazon you get them a lot cheaper, all sets. That's 90 ones for 75 euros, so that would be 48 pencils of these would be 40 euros basically. Decent price, but I don't think I would buy them, because there's better pencils for that price, definitely better pencils. Yeah, there are better pencils depending on the work. Unless you do a lot of nature work, then these colors they would suit. They would be very nice, because the others all have more generic colors, except for the Bruynzeels would have really designer colors more. The rest have more generic colors, so for nature work these would be great. But then since Prismacolors and Pablos and the others have a huge range of colors, probably you would get pretty much the same colors close to it. So no, I don't think I would recommend those, seeing the price and how they perform. Let's see, Prismacolors we did, and then we have these three left. These are all the expensive ones, 70 euros for 48 of them. So we got the really cheap ones, we got the mid-range pricing from 40 to 55 euros, and then we got the 70 euros, the high price. So the Derwents, very expensive and performing not good, so I wouldn't buy them. Depending on the paper you use, some papers they perform great, others they just do very poorly, and they didn't do much better as the cheap hobbyist paper, which are 6 euros for 45, and these are 70 euros for 48, so I wouldn't recommend the Derwents at all. If you are worried about light fasteners, then the Caran D'ache Pablos or the Faber-Castell Polychromos would be the best. My personal preference would be the Caran D'ache Pablos, because they performed well on every paper and every technique, and the Polychromos didn't do well on every paper. They do well with every technique, but not with every paper. Again, if you do comic work, definitely the Prismacolors, but not for other work. But if you want the best all-round pencil and for a great price, I would just definitely recommend buying the Koh-I-Noor Hardtmuth Polycolor. Yeah, so that pretty much concludes my test. These are the winners, definitely by far. And if you need okay light fasteners, these do well. Do you need extreme light fasteners, then I would say test them first, and test them and see if they perform well enough for what you do, and if they stay well enough. And I set out to test my Goldfabers, Faber-Castells, but honestly, compared to the others and the price, my preference would be the Koh-I-Noors. They do way better than those, and their price just a little bit above the price. And my definitely favorites are the Pablos, the Caran D'ache Pablos. I think those are the best. They got the highest rating, definitely the best, but that depends on what you want to spend. So if you just do coloring, then coloring, I just would buy a local cheap brand, an artist that's not artist quality, a hobbyist quality, amateur quality. They are great for coloring, and even other kinds of works. They're just well enough. If you do all-round work, all kinds of works, I would recommend the Koh-I-Noors. If you are an artist, Polychromos, but my recommendation would be the Pablos. And if you're an architect, as said before, then I definitely would go for the Bruynzeels. And if you only do smooth papers and comics, Prismacolors are the way to go. And that concludes my review of all these pencils. Thank you very much for watching. And as you can see, probably one pencil is missing, Caran D'ache Lumens, and I didn't get my hands on those. Those are supposed to be very good, but they're in a very different price range, outpricing even the most expensive here, very expensive. So I just didn't get them in this range. They're probably great pencils, but not didn't do them in this review. and they might perform way better, but I'm not sure if they're way better. So that's probably people can put that in the comments if those are really that much better than, let's say, the Polychromos and the Koh-I-Noors and the Pablos. I somehow doubt it, but who knows? The Koh-I-Noors surprised me too, so those could surprise me. If I ever get my hands on those, then I'll definitely review those. But for now, that's the end of the review. Thank you for watching. I hope this was a bit helpful in your choice for pencils, and have fun coloring and creating art.